Hello, everyone, and welcome to this edition of Hospitality Digital Marketing This Week, episode number 53. I found out that we're actually over a year old. I didn't start counting until like the fifth show, so we're over a year now. So yay, golf clap.
Congrats.
With us today is the esteemed Mr. Neil Fagan from, well, actually, you have a longer title now because it's just not Fairmount Raffles. You got to talk about Accor. You got a lot to talk about.
Yeah, so we were acquired by Accor, so we are a very large organization now.
And you have the incredible burden of representing a very esteemed organization of the Revenue Management Board for HSMAI. They've sent you as the lone wolf.
That's right. I'm here to represent.
Which is awesome. We had fun. We had the Digital Marketing Council call this past week. And we talked about the joy of having you join the call this week. I had thought there would be more people interested in. Hey, Holly's with us. Hey, Holly, you can jump in if you want to. We got an empty seat until Robert shows up. Matter of fact, we probably want you more than Robert anyway. So come on in. And also with us, is Hunter from Flip2. Hunter, hello. How are you today, sir?
I am great. I'm really excited to be on here.
Thank you for being here. And might I say, you look better than your normal Mr. Edward St. Ange. He has this, this kind of laid back, open air attitude, but you have that kind of tight in microphone. I'm here for business.
Yeah, I'm trying to get close and personal, so.
Yeah, really it is. You get the sound. We got the between the two of us, we kind of got that professional audio thing going on. But Neil's rocking it with the headset, so I can't say much for it. Boy, don't show up for the blab and Lauren roast you. Yeah. Guess what's going to happen to you if you don't join, at least to say hi. We're going to roast you too. All right. As we think that Robert Cole is going to be joining us and potentially Miss Holly Zoba, and also I think Mr. Sean Williams said he might try to drop in. And anybody that's participating today, thank you for joining us live. And for those who watch the recording, shame on you for having to catch the recording. You can catch us live and add your 2 cents in if you'd like to. I had thrown out loosely some agenda items, but Neil, you had some great. You have a really good point that you want to start to, because it seems to be a persistent theme that we constantly try to come back to, and that is the melding of revenue management with digital marketing. And it is a privilege to actually have you on the show to be able to discuss a pure revenue management perspective as you see these two paths crossing. I would love to just kind of start by saying, what thoughts do you have about the process? How do you envision the timeline, and how do you think the progression is going to go when it comes to that? And please elaborate as long as you want to, and I'll just butt in and ask questions.
Yeah, definitely do. I think it's a long time coming. We just rolled out at FRHI at the beginning of this year a new scorecard, and in that scorecard for revenue management, we've included a number of things that are digital marketing related, and somewhat to the chagrin of some of the revenue management folks. Like, for example, on conversion online, people are saying, "What in the world am I doing? Having conversion on my scorecard?" It's like, well, because we're beyond the days of revenue management being just yielders. We're in the business of driving incremental revenue, and marketing has a big part to do with that. We're just not looking at the busy time frames and trying to yield that. We're looking at the time frames where we need the business and needing marketing in order to fill in that empty business. So you need to step up and get a better understanding of that and bring the right people to the revenue strategy table to understand how to fill in that empty business. So I think we're starting down that road. I think it's a long time coming, but even with some of the best, directors of revenue management that are out there, they're a little bit slow to pick up on it and understand the importance of it. So we're getting there, though. I think as overall as an industry, we're slowly but surely getting revenue management and digital marketing more in tune with each other. And I think digital marketing, by the way, is at a place right now where revenue management was many years ago. I mean, revenue management's not that old of an industry, but digital marketing's even younger, and they're going through a lot of the same growing pains that revenue management went through a decade ago. Mm-hmm. So, revenue management has that expertise, especially for like the dinosaurs like me that have been in it for a long time. And I got a nice little head hands up there from Robert. I think that there's a lot to be learned, and that we can accelerate that learning curve by getting revenue management more involved with digital marketing.
Oh, Ms. Roberts going to join us. And meanwhile, quick question. I wonder where it was the divine spark that happened. Because back in the day when I was GM early on, and there was no revenue management, it was reservations managers. And they were front desk, usually front desk, head of front desk or something. Hello, Mr. Robert.
Hey, how are you?
Oh, good. We bashed you while you weren't here.
That's all right. I would expect nothing less.
Of course.
I'm glad to have a friend in the headset club.
Yeah, there's the headsets, and then there's the better.
Look at these pro mic setups. Wow.
Oh yeah.
I know.
We bring it on.
Just don't start singing.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I had a little Rolling Stones roll in. I don't know whether you catch it on the recording. I did a little because I sent a little email over sounding like attempting to sound like Robert Williams on Good Morning Vietnam. So that started the Rolling Stones conversation.
I've got dark. There we go.
Robert, you're not there anymore. Anyway,
we're fixing some lighting. Lighting change. There we go.
Yeah, your 3 key lights. Yeah. So Neil, when do you think that that spark happened where it was somebody says, wait a minute, instead of just reporting reservations, we can influence what that information can be used for? Was there a particular timeline or date that you remember or transition within the organization you were with that you saw that happen?
I don't think there was a specific time, but I do remember early on in my career when I was with Hilton, I was hired with the DoubleTree. So it was part of the DoubleTree roundup. It was when Promise was just acquired by Hilton. And all of the DoubleTree hotels had been given the directive by Hilton, make sure that you have a director of revenue management for each one of your properties. So I was hired as part of that process. And I remember sitting in my first budget meeting with the general manager, and all of a sudden the VP that was there overseeing it just paused the entire meeting and looked at me and looked at the GM and said, stop a second. This guy that's sitting right here, you don't have him doing reservations, do you? And the GM went, well, yeah, kind of. We were thinking he would do reservations. And he's like, no, this guy is the most important guy around this table. He's going to make you more money than anyone. If you need help in reservations, Mr. GM, you pick up the phone, not this guy. Wow. So, Hilton, I think, started picking up on that early on. And I think other organizations, have moved along in down that line. But I don't think there was one specific point in time. I think it was just something that transitioned over time where executives started seeing the importance and the brain power that was behind there and the revenue generation that could be had with a waste of time of just focusing in on the reservations aspect of things.
Yeah.
I can go back in ancient history since that is my role here.
He is the keeper of the chrono. You remember on the Pirates of the Caribbean when what's his name from Rolling Stones rolled out with the book? And
Keith Richards, my hero. I've patterned my life after him. Yeah.
Yeah, the pirate. All right, Mr. Pirate Code. Go back in history.
So, and they hate. Unfortunately, Ed and Tim aren't here, but I have to mention Four Seasons because I was with Four Seasons. I was their corporate director. Yeah. Sorry, I'm old. That's the job I was there. 1985. It must have been around this time of the year, 1985. I moved up to Toronto, headed marketing plan, and we discovered none of the hotels had common pricing strategies at all. And at that time, all the GMs got together, and it was actually push ADR. Occupancy was a completely nonsensical thing to discuss because that didn't work well at cocktail parties, but ADR was great. Oh, what's your ADR? Oh, you're only in the 300s. Yeah, I'll move away and go over with this group. Yeah, that's higher. But it was amazing. We actually redid the pricing structure across the entire group of hotels, and that's where I kind of proudly say we came up with the policy of not really discounting radically. And
what's interesting,
has helped
Robert,
that kind of since. Now, I should say publicly discounting because on the group side, all hell would break loose. But at least in terms of having a rational rate structure that you could kind of stand behind and actually get rid of some of these rate structures where these minimum rack rates were outrageously high and the hotel was 40-50% lower than that in their true transient rates. So, but Neil.
Yeah, I was just going to say, early on in my career, I had a general manager once say to me, I don't care about RevPAR, Neil. All I care about is occupancy and rate.
Yeah.
It's like, okay, well, so I think, what's funny is that we're actually just entering into a period that I'm calling the revenue management renaissance, because we are now just getting to the point. The average length of time that it takes for someone to become a general manager in their career is about 20 years. So we're just at that cusp now where there are general managers that are coming in to being a general manager that have had exposure to revenue management before they were a GM. So they've been growing up with it. They get a better understanding of it. And there's less of what I just described of, I don't care about RevPAR. I just care about occupancy and rate. There's much better understanding of the discipline now, which really, is making the revenue management discipline much more ready for some leaps and bounds, I think, from the executive leadership that's at the hotel.
I have to say, though, I'm very happy that I stepped away from being a GM before a real transition occurred. You made a good point, Neil, but when they realized the revenue management was probably at that time and still is to some degree the most important revenue generation person sitting around that table, as I used to be back in the day, that when ownership came to the property, they came to the GM for all aspects, including revenue success. And I moved into the corporate level before it transitioned to when the ownership showed up at the property, they now go to the revenue manager's office past the GM's desk. And I would find it a hard transition. Holly was in this conversation we had even last week, where we're talking about what makes a good GM and so forth. And part of it is kind of swallowing a bitter pill that you're not in complete leveraged control of all aspects. You have influence on decisions. It's not that you don't. But the revenue manager has, more times than not in the history that I've been engaged with them prior to this, usually had the last word when it came to final policies about pricing and what they're going to be doing as revenue strategy. And I find that it's kind of a hard, you can't have two CEOs, you can't have two leaders of an organization, but you have to share that responsibility of revenue success with somebody that isn't exactly the GMs. And I don't know, you went through that whole process. Do you feel that it created a friction, or do you think that it created a better streamlined way of making decisions? What do you think about some of the timeline for that?
A little bit of both. I think that it's definitely led to the need in revenue management for more than just an analyst, right? You don't need someone that can just figure out what the right answer is. They need to also be that storyteller, someone that can actually convey it in a way of someone that doesn't understand, complex analytics and can turn it into a story and say, this is really the direction we need to move in. So not only do I know the right answer and do I know where we need to go, but I'm able to convince the team around me that, yes, move with me. This is the direction that the organization should be moving in, because those directors of revenue management that didn't have that skill set, they're dying off because they haven't been successful. Even though they know what needs to happen, they know where the pricing needs to be, they know what channels they need to be in. They haven't been successful because they haven't successfully gotten the buy-in from the other constituents around the room. And that's the way the culture is today. So that's the type of DRM that you need today, is someone that can do those types of things.
Neil, just to let you
say the same thing for digital marketing. I mean,
right.
that you need someone that's not just the person that knows the right answer, but can convince the right players, the right key constituents, and by telling the story.
Just to get comfortable with the space that we're in, David is a constant contributor to ours. And David, thank you very much for always being here for us. He's noticing that he just posted up that he had a white paper on live chat values, which we want to get to sometime in the conversation today. But he also just gave you a compliment in the sense of how you've put analytics and storytelling together in the process of it. Because it's true. It's like you said, there's people that have been right all along, just nobody was listening to them because they don't have the ability to convey the information. I think my favorite example of that is the old FedEx commercial where they all pile around the boardroom table. And it's like, all right, people, we got to save money here. We got to think of ideas and this. And the guy from the mail room's like, I know, we should use FedEx for such and such. And nobody hears him. But then the sales guy goes, wait, I have a thought. We should use FedEx for all of our packaging. And the guy's like, oh, that's brilliant. He said, I just said that. I said, yeah, well, you didn't do this.
You went like this. I went like this.
Yeah. Like this. Yeah. But it's true. It's not just the message. It's the conveyance of the message. It's the ability to translate the information. And it kind of goes back to some of our earlier conversations from GMs, consultants, and so forth. Sometimes people say the same things that other people said within your organization, but somehow, for whatever the reasons may be, better communication skills or just timeliness or the perspective that the person listening is now listening to that person, the message gets through. And it's funny because you're sitting there going, I've been saying this to you all along, but the familiarity of your voice is white noise. And sometimes it just takes an alternate person to say the same thing for it to get conveyed through. So good point.
It can be psychology too. It could be other things too. Like it can be who is the decision maker here, and how do I convince that one person? It could be storytelling, or it could be, hey, that person really trusts this other person. So before I get into the meeting, I'm going to sit down with that person they really trust, get them on board with a one-on-one, and make it like it's her idea because he loves her. Right. And then when she says it, he buys in. It's great. We're perfect.
You know what?
Going down the
There should be a class to that because it's a skill that's learned from experience, not learned from being taught. From a strong agency side of it, for the 2 years I was doing it, that when you walked into a room for a presentation, you had what was perceived to be the decision maker sitting at the head of the table. Really, in effect, that wasn't the person you were talking to. You were talking in front of them to the people that they brought with them that were the authorities to each of that. So, like if Hunter was in a meeting and I was the video dude presenting stuff, and Ed sitting on the end of the table, and Hunter's in there, and after listening to the introductions of who's who, I want Hunter to like me. I want Hunter to believe in me, because at the end of the day, Ed's going to ask Hunter, hey, is this guy legit? Is this the guy that's going to be doing this stuff for us? What is your, because you're brought in that room for that professional opinion. And revenue managers have filled a very good role for that, for ownership, because they're the voice on their side of the table that's listening to this carpet bag list of people that come parading through about how they're going to improve their revenue values. So in going back to the original merging of digital marketing and revenue management, there has to be this confluence, because now there's some questions that are beyond the scope of revenue management's purview, that they're not engaged with the actual facilitation of some of these things that can get done. Digital marketing is, but they're late to the conversation sometimes. I think that's the one thing I've noticed the most, is that digital marketers are now being included in more revenue discussions before decisions are made, than being told what revenue decisions were, and then for them to implement the actual strategy for success. So,
see, I move it up a level to the business strategy area, right? So that's where the groups where you can start getting the digital marketing, the revenue management, operation, whatever it may be. It's got to be agreement on that. And then I think where a lot of the conflict still exists are kind of the brand world and the strategies there, and the owners, especially if you wind up getting into a downturn where all of a sudden you start getting the conflicts of, hey, we need to do this and shore up the brand, and the owners need to do this, and the owners are like, wait a second, this is going to get expensive, not right now, let's put that off. And that's where you can start getting some challenges to work things out.
Holly just shut down my statement in the text.
She did.
Yeah, that experience is the only way you can gain the knowledge of how to read a room. She says, no, I have a book on that. So that's great, Holly. Thanks. Scratch that idea for that one. I'm just going to sit back here and listen to you all talk now, since I can't make a solid point. No, thank you, Holly.
I'll take over now.
That's right.
Neil, what else would you like to say about? I mean, I want to make sure your topic is well covered before we start throwing some of the news items around. Any other confluence? What you brought us up to where we are now? What else do you see as the migration of the melding of the minds, I guess?
Yeah, I think from a revenue management standpoint, anyway, it all comes down to revenue generation. We started within our organization just last year to try to shift the culture to a total hotel profit optimization versus just looking at the room side. And as that goes, that brings more people to the table. So in that, we based it on a remote session where it's a webinar based thing that's a recording that people they come in. And for example, what it does, it says, okay, here's what we're going to do today. You're going to learn about this. And these are the people that you need to have in the room, A, B, C, and D. And if it's just you in the room, stop right now and go get those people and bring them in the room, because this isn't going to work unless everyone's there.
Nice.
What's kind of funny is I've had some hotels come to me and say, Neil, we didn't listen. We did it our own way. And now we realize we got to do it this way.
Mm-hmm.
We have to do it the way that you had outlined it. And that's bringing digital marketing into these discussions, which I think is important. I've gotten some feedback already within this first year that it's really been successful in shifting the culture, not just towards total profit optimization and understanding, what are those revenue streams and how are they important, but from the room side of getting more marketing involvement in that. Just like as you're saying, right? I mean, you need that, because otherwise there's just going to always be friction. There's going to be a marketing campaign that goes out over a time frame. Revenue management says, we know we don't need the business over this time frame. You're killing us. Like, this doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Or the reverse, where a marketing campaign goes out and revenue management's not in the loop, and they see all this business. They go, wow, this is great. I'm going to forecast this next year, but I have no idea why we got all this business. I just assume it's going to come again. And then when it doesn't, say, what in the world happened? Where did all of that business go? And my history was great and looked great. And so, yeah, I think that we're getting there, at least, within our organization. And I hear things from other organizations as well, as they're doing a better job of bringing all these people around the table. And I think, as we're talking about this, for digital marketing to get more buy-in, revenue management's a great key constituent, because for a long time now, we've been the measurements of success, right? And so lots of the executives come to revenue management to find out, did it really work? Or is this just, when, some people might say, oh, well, it generated this number of room nights. Revenue management would say things like, hold on a second. Who cares how many room nights it generated? How many did it potentially take away from something else? So they've been kind of a word of trust, right? Someone that's out there that says, okay, what's the real story here? What's really going on? And I think digital marketing can leverage that in order to be more successful in implementing their needs in the future.
True. Right. Now, Holly does have a question. We're going to get to it just real quick. She has one for you, Neil. I really, with the thought that you just made, I want to ask, do you feel it's fair to think that we'll eventually hold revenue managers and potentially digital marketers to bottom line revenue numbers and not just top line? Because you talked about profitability, and I've been that's my recent soapbox is ProPar and cost per acquisitions and so forth that don't get measured. That OTAs, we give them a free rein on budgeting because we in our internal accounting we don't directly attribute the costs associated with the business they're driving for us. Yet meanwhile we'll have a great successful marketing campaign with massive amounts of return, but we have a budget cap on it because it's a line item on our P&L, and we'll shut it off even though it's hugely profitable, simply because we designated the amount of money and it ran out. Yet OTAs continue to go on because we just absorb the cost within the net value that they represent. So do you think that ProPar, for lack of just pointing a finger at something, do you think profitability is going to be the next generation of the reason why the melding might occur is because we have to show not just strategy, but success of strategy in a definable way?
I think we're already heading there. I mean, I know within our organization, profitability is part of the incentive plan for revenue management. It's not the biggest part, but it is a big part. It's one of the three main contributors to it. So as it gets more complex and there's more available, I mean, I'm not a proponent as of right now of changing away from RevPAR index as the key performance indicator, just because it's the one that has the best information that's out there. If you think about revenue management, digital marketing too, it's all about driving incremental revenue. So what better metric do we have today that's readily available than RevPAR index? I don't think there is one. Right. Will we get there? Yeah, I think we will, but we're not there today. So Lauren, I think you're right. We're moving in that direction. And when some of these other KPIs become more the norm, then there will be a shift over to those. In the meantime, they should be balanced out, like what we're doing today, of having RevPAR index as one of those key items, and it's the most important one, but balancing it out with, in our case, GOP. So to make sure that you're not robbing, revenue from the profit, that you're keeping that in mind. So the short answer is yes, but we're not there yet, and we're not ready to make that shift yet.
Well, and it ties back to the storytelling, because it's a lot easier to tell a story with something like RevPAR, where it ties in across all properties. And when you really are looking at total revenue in ProPar, and all of a sudden you have an F&B heavy hotel over here and something that has heavy banqueting space over here, those things start to really cloud the issue, and you don't get that clean story of here's how it works, and it's hard to get things done when it's this works for over here, but no, we're going to do something different for you over there. So RevPAR is it's nice, but it's not, as Neil said, it's not really the best measure. You've got to get down to that profit, because that's what really counts is the money in the bank, not the, hey, look at how, try cashing in room nights on a Friday for a weekend. That doesn't work so well. So
right. So Holly's question for you, Neil, was where do salespeople fit in now, and how should they be spending their time differently? David has interesting perspective on that, but before we get to his statement off to the side, how do you feel about that? Where do you think that salespeople fit now?
Well, I don't know that the place that they fit is all that different. I think that, a director of sales and marketing is probably not the best, is to have both sales and marketing doing, that person doing both things. They're different. And that you should have someone that oversees the marketing initiatives and have someone that oversees sales. I don't think that it's changed all that much, though. I mean, the tactics that go behind it have changed, but really sales, I see the comment here that it's more of a customer service thing. It's always been about relationships. Yeah. Really, sales is about the relationship. I mean, revenue management can change someone's decision when it comes on price. So if you're trying to negotiate with an account and say, we really want IBM in what do we need to do in order to get them? Well, we could drop our rate by $20. Revenue management can do those things, but it's sales that can actually say, you know what? I can get IBM to stay at our hotel
Right.
without going down by $20 because Joe at IBM likes me. I went out to dinner with him the other night. We're really good friends. He trusts me. It's relationships. And I don't think that's changed. I think sales will always be about relationships.
Well, and a big part of that operationally, from being in national sales and at the property level sales, is that they are also the voice of the customer in a loud way. So when operations starts going, nah, we don't really do it that way. It's like, no, if we want to get Coca-Cola in here, we've got to get rid of every Pepsi product in the hotel. And, and there are situations, where there's go, oh, that's just ridiculous. No, that's not ridiculous. That can kill business for, one hotel messes up, that can pull out the entire brand sort of thing. So, all those things of these guys really need this. Here's something that we're going to do and how to price that right. So they aren't just giving away all of a sudden, strange upgrades and services and things that all of a sudden that customer is going to expect as the norm at the next property they do. It's a very, very important area. And yes, a lot of it comes down to, certainly automation and doing RFPs and getting all of that process to be very efficient. But the bottom line really comes down to what's the experience that group's going to have. And again, that storytelling capability to say, you bring your people to our resort, our hotel, whatever is going to happen. And here's how you're going to have such a great meeting or such and such great event, or we're going to serve your needs for corporate business so well. Yes, your company is going to be higher achieving, and that's your objective. That's what happens. Because again, they're looking at the same thing. How do they make that particular task work best for their company and to get the biggest return on their investment? And great salespeople can do that. A lot of them, it's a lot like travel agencies. You had great travel agents and you had ones who just kind of took orders and were just kind of processing paper, right? Just kind of going back and forth. Those guys, need to get automated out of the loop probably, but the true ones who really work sales and really develop it and make the hotel operation better and really have the ear of the customer, those guys are invaluable.
Last week in relationship to the GMs, Robert, I mean, we talked about the fact that the GMs that were resistant to, hey, I'm here to run a hotel, I don't have time for that digital marketing stuff, are literally being phased out because of the need. The GMs have to be multi-adaptive and they have to be present in their awareness of what's available for them in tools. But to Holly's question, I think the motivation behind it, I'm not trying to read into it, Holly, correct me if I'm wrong, the sales council or board, for instance, and HSMAI, there's this languishing as to the value of how they connect to things. I would say that the bridge work between digital marketing and sales is just as critical as the bridge work between digital marketing and revenue management, because sales, I thought it was a huge injustice when digital marketing first started coming into hospitality that it was thrown on the salespeople, with the default being, we're not going to hire anybody to do this, and you're the only people that are out selling the hotel. And the real reality of it is that digital marketing was more a transient-based business opportunity in the early stages, and yet the salespeople's basic living was based on their group sales capability. Yeah, why would they sell something that diminishes their ability to sell their group bookings? So
it's B2B versus B2C.
Right.
That's the bottom line.
But to your point,
generally speaking.
Yeah, but to your point, good salespeople are relationship builders. Just like people go over and say, well, PR is dead, or PR. I can send out a PR piece and I can send it by silo and location and all this other stuff. That's not PR. That's broadcasting. PR is the fact that you can call up an editor at a place and have something put into their publication because of the relationship you have with them, that they know you're giving them good content worthy of their sharing it on their platform. Same too with sales. To your point, Neil, they're the people that bring the business to the hotel, and so because of that, their value proposition is, I think they need to learn a little bit about digital marketing, because there's so many tools out there now. You don't need to blitz anymore. It's back in the days. Now you just isolate them on different platforms, and you can message them directly, anybody that you want to within any organization, without having to show up on their doorstep and try to get through gatekeepers with a bag of cookies. So I think there's bridge work on all points to it, but I think the first bridge work that I think that you're making, Neil, is revenue management to digital marketing. The data has to be blended so that the strategies can be implemented, but the strategies are understood so the implementation is successful. Because the examples you gave, advertising when you don't need the business, getting the business when you don't know where it's coming from, is lack of communication but value of strategy. Offer things that maybe aren't selling when you're the belle of the ball during season, but you're building up your brand awareness and your database of connectivity so that when it is a slow season, you have resources to tap. by the same token, don't put money back on the table because you had some offer that you were able to put out there, which sold like hotcakes, but you didn't need to really make that offer, because we had that conversation 3 weeks ago on the show where revenue managers do a terrible job. Ed brought up a great example of a Tampa hotel he went to that was way underpriced based on the demand for the weekend that he was going there. And it was because of just unfortunate revenue management unawareness that they didn't even know that event was an influencer on their business demands. So, yeah.
Well, if I can just add one thing, I think digital marketing, though, can help sales dramatically. But again, it's focusing on that B2B aspect of what tools can you provide your customers, in terms of business. If they're looking at meeting space, if they're looking at various corporate things, proximity to other businesses in the area, things like that. If you're a suburban hotel or if you're an airport hotel, different things that really are key sales points for getting in group movements of people or establishing a good foothold in the corporate market. You look at most hotel websites, they don't do very well. They've got a nice picture of the ballroom. It's all set up for a wedding and it looks spectacular. But a lot of those things, are certainly in some of the meeting, some of the third-party meeting applications, RFP applications, but, really effectively selling your group business, that then you can have landing pages developed and things like that when you start really kicking in a nice organized campaign on Salesforce or something like that, where you can really start managing these folks down the funnel. There's a huge amount of opportunity for digital marketing to impact that. Retargeting, huge opportunities in that, with some people who generate some really big dollars. But I think kind of goes overlooked very often.
Because people don't know about it.
Yeah.
It happens a lot in revenue management, digital marketing, and sales. Like, if they're in silos, they don't. It happened the other day with me. I was talking about something, a metric that we're using, and another department said, "How are you getting that? Like, where are you getting that information from? How does that even come about?" So, it's just being able to understand that it's there, that it's open, and that there's the opportunity to do those things.
Yeah, yes. Very true. Holly made a good point that she made, but not so much more challenging to bridge the relationship between sales and digital as is digital versus red. But it is, because sales is kind of like still the last island. Even though the water is rising, they still think that they're going to survive the flood. In some ways.
Well, but it is relationships, but those relationships are changing in terms of how the communication takes place, and how meeting planners and association planners, things like that, how they're being measured. I mean, there are some groups out there who are strategically telling, if they've got a large group where, yes, they pay for the association board and that sort of thing to stay at Hotel A, but they're out there marketing to other folks. Airbnb is going heavy into the group market very aggressively, trying to target these planners and saying, look, if you've got a large number of people coming in, have them stay here. If they're paying out of their own pocket, you can save money, you can do this, it's nearby. And really big dynamic change. The number of people who go and book on Hotwire and Priceline, and heaven forbid the hotel's sold out. I always look at it for something like a Focusrite conference or something like that. The Prime Hotel sold out, and all of a sudden here are these neighboring hotels who can go pick them up.
For that one.
The snipering, yes, Lauren's snipering story.
I still have the best one for that, Neil. I don't know if you've heard me say this before or not. But back when I was with Ocean Properties, we had a hotel just up the road, the Marriott, and I was speaking at Focusrite that year. And I thought, rather than drive down and have to drive up in the morning or whatever, I'll just stay down at the hotel. So I called the Dip. I was down Fort Lauderdale that year, and their rack was like $4.99. And I'm like, no. So I figured, you know what? I'll see if I got any space. We're probably sold out, but I'll call our hotel and see if there's any space that I can get a comp room for or something, And I call up and I said, what's your occupancy? Question to ask before you ask about for a free room. And they said 62%. I'm like, why are you 62% for that? There's a conference just down the road that they're freaking $500 racks. And they're like, what conference? I'm like, oh, okay. So I'm like, so I look, says, what's your rack right now? And it was $100 less. I said, okay, fine. So on Facebook, I targeted everybody that was liking Focusrite, that was liking or following the people that were their key sponsors and so forth. And I literally posted on Facebook, going to Focusrite, $100 less, 10 minutes up the road, 4-star resort on the beach, Marriott, Hollywood, and so forth. We sold out for the whole week and got a few thousand extra people following on Facebook. So, okay, that was a great one-time story. It's like, yeah, see, social media works. So 2 years later, it cycled back to the Dip again. and it was like hitting the monkey hitting the red button. Did it all over again, same effect. It's like, do you guys not? I mean, it's just you could target that kind of way, and that's what revenue management and digital marketing, I think, those kind of combinations, those things saying, hey, look, I got this on the board. What can we do? Or digital marketing coming to revenue management and saying, hey, this is the stuff we're seeing, we're planning for on our calendar. Is there any teeth to it that you guys want to use, kind of thing? So,
yeah, it's leveraging the intelligence around the room. It's digital marketing. It's everyone for revenue management. You want to, I mean, you got to weed through some of the stuff because some of the stuff is just not true. Like people will say things like for example, sales, like Robert, what you were talking about many times. As they're being an advocate for the group that they're representing, they're advocating a little bit too much and they're going a little bit overboard. So, I mean, you have to be able to weed through and find out what the true statements are. But Lauren, to your point, maybe the revenue manager, forgot totally about that, didn't put a special event in and said, I don't have to worry. The demand's going to come in at the very last minute. Like, we're going to be fine. Don't worry about it.
Relax. Stay calm. What is that? National Lampoon. Remain calm.
But Neil makes a great point, though, because in many cases, the salespeople do such a great job and they are customer focused that, the revenue management, group has to come in and go, wait a second, you can't give them that. These guys are booking during a peak period. We're displacing other, but you've got to say no to that. It's got to be you can't give away the such and such free or whatever. Banquets should not have to take one, for the team in this particular case because they've got this demand. No, they're going to have to pay for it. Sorry.
Now, I'm hoping, Neil, you can stay with us for the fact when Hunters turns into the focus of our conversation. But to go back to some of the news articles and things, I just lost my thought with it. Some of these points I want to bring out that I made the articles or picked the articles because they're revenue management related, and just to be able to ask you some questions on some of these fronts. This article in particular was in relationship to finding good management candidates. I know because being able to join in on your conversations with the revenue board, that it is a persistent topic, is finding talented people. And that talent spectrum has shifted from the conversations I've witnessed as to what was originally looked at as a good revenue manager to what is now being looked at as a good revenue manager. I'd love your thoughts as to what you perceive as, what are you looking for when you're looking for a revenue management candidate, and what do you see as the future of needing those people?
Yeah, so the article is good. I recommend it. I think it's more aspirational, the article is, than it is reality, where it's saying, oh, revenue managers are looking for all these things. The good news is that I don't think there's a single organization that has the complete list of everything that a revenue manager is looking for. So it makes it a little bit easier to compete and say, yeah, come on, we got 3 out of the 4. Come on over to us.
Good. You're breathing, right? You're still breathing.
You fog the mirror. Excellent. You're all right.
No, but I mean, what are we looking for? We're looking for the same type of stuff that other people are looking for. Are you looking for just what we were talking about? Is someone that not only can analyze the situation and understand what direction needs to be taken, but be able to convince the executives within the team to be able to make those types of changes. And that's why there's such a shortage of people. It's a hard skill set. Combining those two things together is difficult. But that's the reality of where we are today. And the article talked about, the need to do some revenue management for hire things in order to help with economies of scale, especially in markets where you don't have that expertise. We do that stuff too. And I think for us, we also try to build a lot of our talent internally. Years and years ago, when I first came in with FRHI, it was obvious that as an organization, we didn't pay quite as much as some of the other organizations back then. So we had, by necessity, we had to build our own talent. So we did. And built a number of different programs to build from the ground up. But at the same time, we needed to change the understanding from compensation that we need to pay a little bit more in order to keep these folks as they gain more experience. So that's kind of where we've ended up. Most of the talent that we have is homegrown because of that. But it takes a while to build your farm system by doing it that way. Yeah. It's not a short-term project.
And the problem,
the biggest thing in that, the one other thing that I'll point out from that article that I wholeheartedly agree with is that you need to have a cultural a revenue management culture embraced beyond just the room side of things. And as I was talking about with RevPro, that's what we've been doing. I've had a handful of revenue managers leave the company over the past 2 to 3 years that I've met up with every single one of those afterward, and they wish they never left. They thought that the grass was greener on the other side of the fence because we only had 3 out of the 4 things, and they thought they were going to get that 4th thing over there at the other company, and realized, my gosh, we actually did a really good job at FRHI. Like, we've got a lot of good stuff going on over here, and they miss it.
Yeah.
So the list is good. I recommend the article. It's good. But as I said, I think it's aspirational. Robert, I'll turn it back to you.
No, I think the only thing I was going to add is, yes, and you do a great job. And that is one of the problems, that you do a great job. You develop these revenue managers, you get a reputation for it, and you start getting your people poached. But again, if they can go rise up to a great position and have great careers, that's, you need that bench strength, and developing that farm system internally is absolutely critical.
And beyond that, what's interesting is that beyond that, some of the programs that we've had that are geared to really get new revenue managers people don't end up liking it. They say, you know what, this isn't for me. But what's actually happened is, well, they stay within the organization, and now you have more people around the table that have a foundation of revenue management knowledge, so they understand what's going on, even if they haven't moved into the discipline. So it's helped the culture overall in that way too.
It's the classic management training program approach where, you're going to spend some time in housekeeping. You're going to spend some time in the kitchens. You're going to do all those sorts of things. Because again, it's real easy to just say, hey, they need to turn more covers down there because, it's just not doing it. We were at X hotel, and, we generated, such and such, whatever food and beverage profit per square foot, and then all of a sudden you go, oh, well, there's the way the kitchen's set up, and it happens to do with the way the freezers are, and you've suddenly got these little weird situations where you go, you got some bottlenecks in here that are really going to do this. That helps on the revenue, instead of just this conflict between the chef and the revenue, or the food and beverage directors, whoever. Not being productive.
I think there's 2 things for this. One is, I've always recommended to people that before you jump ship, no matter how interesting it may be, move laterally within the organization you're already in, because, and this is my point to be made, if you are a rising star in your organization, you started at a certain level and you rose to a certain level at the same property, let's say, you have the support of the people that saw your growth, and that's an inherent, they're your cheerleading people. They're the ones that saw you grow. They're supporting you. It's a lot harder to take that level that you've attained and then shift laterally to a new property where as soon as you walk in the door, the assumption of your performance is based on the title that you're walking in with. So if you came, for me, my experience was from food and beverage. When I rose to being food and beverage director, that was with the team that I had doing that. They were all applauding it. When I went to the first hotel as the new food and beverage director, that was a huge shift in, like, oh my gosh, I'm walking in the door having to already be at the level of my highest performance. And to do that into a new company puts a double variable to you that it sets you up for potential failure, because not only are you learning the new culture, you're learning your value proposition to that culture at a level that you just reached at as your peak. So sometimes it's good to at least move. Then if you've moved lateral and you still think the grass is greener on the other side, at least you have the confidence in your abilities because you maintained your performance level at the level that you attained, and you can move over with it. So from a voice of that, and the other is, I thought it was very interesting, a hotel group that their revenue manager doesn't report to the owners. It's so easy that when you're always talking to the boss or the parents, you get this kind of arrogant attitude that you don't have to worry about the little people. The revenue manager had to report to their morning meeting to the staff as to what revenue successes he or she produced for the staff. And in the sense that, we get to keep the hotel, the housekeeping schedule because we're maintaining our revenues to do so, and it put a certain humanizing factor that when they weren't performing at their peak, or they weren't able to create the successes, and it caused them to ask questions of everybody in the marketing and everyone else, because they really felt obligated at this point that they were the person that had to make the money. They had to bring the money to the table. And so I thought that was a very interesting twist that, the ownership will come and talk to revenue managers and so forth, but talking to the staff that you really influence based on your success really humanized, I thought, the perspective of what their job position was in the organization. So I thought that was a pretty neat thing that they'd done as well. So anyway, the other news article that we had, let me throw the link into this, was that the middle tier of hotel development is disappearing. I thought I'd do one for employment and then one for marketing here. This Robert, you have like a whole bevy of other topics, but this one was:
That's okay.
are we losing the middle tier of hotels?
Mhm.
Because we're chasing the money. We have the efficiencies of the low end hotels that are little money cash machines if operated correctly, and then you have the luxury segment, which is also anyway. Neil, it's yours to take.
Well, I'm probably not the expert on this one because we just got acquired by Accor. So until recently, we didn't have a middle tier. We were all luxury. So I did a little bit quick research here this morning because I said, well, that's interesting. I wonder if that's really true, if this is really happening. So I pulled up Boston. I'm in the Boston market and took a look on TripAdvisor to see. One of the points in the article is saying, people aren't, they're not spending the time needed in order to do, research to find the right hotels. They're just going to go. So I did a comparison between the number of reviews that are happening between the luxury, the limited service, and the economy brands. Mm-hmm. And it doesn't really follow with what the article is saying is that, that there's a shift in the two bookends that you're going to see luxury, at being successful in economy, but the middle is getting squeezed out. Luxury ends up getting the most amount of reviews, at least in Boston. And what I took a look at, the mid-tier is getting the middle and economy is getting the least. So I don't know. I mean, I'm not sure. Maybe there is a trend. I haven't done a whole lot of research on this, but I think it might be jumping the gun. There was a lot of referencing to the airline industry. I always am hesitant to look at that as a success story. It's I get a lot of claps for that. It's just that just blows my mind when people do that. That's they. While, I'll leave it at that. Yeah, I think we should not try to emulate them by any means. I think there's some things to be learned, but for the most part, we don't want to follow that same model. I think there's by looking at just what I looked at TripAdvisor, it seems to me that there's still demand out there for it. If there's demand out there for it, people are willing to pay for it, which means that it shouldn't be a product that goes away. And if we're smart about it, we wouldn't let that type of product go away. They would continue to grow because people want it.
Right.
Regardless of whether it makes the most money or not, you'll find a way. If there's demand for the product, you'll find a way to make it profitable.
I think it comes down to it's basically been a result of the large hotel groups not investing in and sufficiently developing the differentiation of their primary brands. And I'll give you a great example. Look at Starwood, right? And they got bought. What was happening? 2/3 of their portfolio, 66%, were Sheratons and Westons. What was getting all of the attention? Aloft, St. Regis, all these new things that are differentiated products. They're very good. But what's a Sheraton versus what's a Weston became a real issue. And that's, I think, what happens in the mid-tier. So it's easier to get development deals to just say, hey, why don't you do a new True, over here? Or why don't you do a new such and such or a Glow or, all these different, new lifestyle brands and things like that. When really, I think a lot what needs to happen in the industry is to look at the large, full service 3- and 4-star products that really need to be modernized. And you're like, well, great. That one, this new brand appeals to millennials. Well, you've got X hundreds or thousands of rooms over here that pretty damn well should appeal to millennials because they're a massive force in the industry. So I think that's kind of the challenge development wise and the focus it's on soft brands, it's on all these other things, and their eyes are not on the ball of where is this really the money coming from for these large investments.
I think two aspects are not accounted for in this article. One is I think it's looking at pipeline development and brand saturation is not included in this concept. I mean, there's a bad taste in ownership's mouths about the oversaturation of brand to market and the dissolution or dissolving of their brand value for the mid-tiers that they purchased in market. Sure. Because of the multi-flavoring of, as what you're putting out, Robert, all these extra flavors that are now brand partners, but not in concept of direct competitors, and yet they're looking at the same income strata for some people, but it's because it's a different brand and it's not in the same tier. It's kind of like going back to the same discussion. It's so hard to describe to people, like on Star Reports, that you're not looking to be the best on tab 4 all the time. You're not looking to be the number one of this all the time, that there's a strategy of mid-tiering yourself, and that there's it's people have to understand that it's not always winning the race all the time. It's being consistent about how you run the race and your performance to it. And fortunately, I think they equate mid-tier in some concepts to being half of something and half of nothing else, that it's kind of a blend between the two. Why go to a full flag Marriott, let's say, we can get free breakfast at one of their lower, their limited service properties, and usually for a lower room rate, especially if you're just transient through. But the same token, destination luxury hotels, you're not going to stay and get just a free breakfast. You want the full effect. So you're going to stay at a luxury band. So where does the mid-tier fit into that? I just think that the article ignored a little bit of the existing inventory and looked at more of the what's in the pipe. That no, there's not a lot of mid-tier build right now because really there's a saturation of it in most DMA markets, and there's not a need for it. What's the need for is filling in the gaps on the low tiers, and there's a lot of ownership shifts in the upper tier. So you're going to see those.
But you also, hit on the point that, yes, in the lower tier, you got free high-speed internet. You got free breakfast, things like that. All of a sudden, you stay at the mid-tier hotel, they were charging exorbitant amounts for room service or charging exorbitant amounts for Wi-Fi and things like that. And you're like, wait a second, I can get this for free. I'm in a room that the square footage is approximately the same. And is it really, what is the true product value of this? And hey, look at this. At the front desk, they put in a bunch of kiosks and things like that. There are lines, there are fewer staff. It's like, wait a second, I can go get a better experience at this other hotel, which, so a lot of it's on that. I think a fascinating one is Marriott with the acquisition of Starwood, because you look at New York City, they're going to have over 100 properties in Manhattan. And you compare it to Hilton. Hilton has 7. So you go, wow, this is a big difference. But Marriott already was making weird sacrifices within their brand. And Marriott's always been very good on brand integrity. But Bulgari, right, is supposed to be their kind of 6-star product. Bulgari is not a member of Marriott Rewards. They don't participate because Ritz-Carlton, all the owners, has an exclusive. That is the exclusive luxury brand that was negotiated into whatever. I don't know if it was the Ritz-Carlton acquisition way back when or what, but that was established probably to support those owners that, yes, they're the only luxury brand in that. Well, I don't know what happens when St. Regis comes in. And all those, Marriott is going, yes, they'll run the program separately, but at some point they're going to they need to get the network effect and integrate those. I don't know how all that falls out, or maybe it's an opportunity for FRHI to go pick up some disgruntled Ritz-Carlton owners. I'm not sure, or St. Regis owners, or Bulgari owners, or whatever. But it's a very interesting challenge of how do you break this stuff up and have all of these hotel brands which truly are segmented and not just kind of cannibalizing it, because that's the brand. That's that rub between the brand and the owner. Yes, the brand needs to get larger to get more revenues, and who cares? It's the density of rooms in a demand zone that they can extract. And that's not necessarily the best thing for that particular owner who's trying to max the RevPAR on their property.
Ed's not here, but I'll embody Ed on this one. He's been foretelling in the past shows so far of the leanness of times that are coming, that it's not going to be the gloom and doom, death, destruction off the cliff thing, but it's budget time. Yay. And it's now, August going into September, where you're towards the end of this month, we have to get more serious about the budgets that are being laid out. The article I just posted up there was reservation pace. Now I know, Robert, you put something in there about ADR decline as a possible topic discussion as well. Even though OTAs and direct bookings and all that, which I want to hit to as well. But since this is one, I don't think we had the chance to share with the posts that you had, the articles you had. But this article talking about reservation pace declining. How are you approaching budgets? Not being specific, but just in general, how are you looking at things moving forward, Neil?
Yeah, well, I think specifically in the U.S., we've been talking about the potential recession that's on the horizon for a long time now. In fact, some people had predicted it would have begun by now. We've got some tools available to our properties to be able to get some leading indicators to let them know, because I'm reluctant at a corporate level to say this is what's going to happen, because I'm going to be wrong in half the markets that I predicted for, and everyone's going to go, oh well, Neil said this, we have to predict it this way. Yeah. So instead, give them the tools that they need in order to help predict what's going to happen in their own markets, because DC is going to behave very differently than Phoenix is going to behave. So, with those tools at their arsenal, they need to make the right decisions and be prepared, because, over 50% of your business is business that's contracted long term. So if you don't predict it right, if you're not getting either a down cycle or an up cycle right far enough in advance, then you're just playing catch up with the other half of your business along with the rest of your comp set. So how are you going to win? You're going to win by predicting that significant turn in business much further ahead than your competition does, and plan for it. So when everyone else is still charging really high rates for group, you've started siphoning off some of that business, and you're building that base, planning because you foresaw that the downturn was coming. Those types of things. But I think it's all local. It's not something that you should sit up on your high horse and dictate from your ivory tower at corporate that this is how it's going to be, and everyone needs to plan for it that way. Yeah. On the reverse side of things, I do think more so now than ever in the past, the hotels that successfully don't cut back in certain areas when it comes to customer service and what the guests are demanding, those are the ones that are going to successfully ride through a recession, because it's so transparent now. I mean, if you're cutting down to, just 2 agents checking people in at the desk and you've got lines out the door, what's going to happen to your TripAdvisor score? It's going to it's going to tank. So the ones that are actually addressing what's going on and not just going, oh my gosh, we got to save the profits. We got to cut everywhere. The ones that actually, you're going to have to cut, but do it smartly so that you're actually, it's an opportunity for those that actually aren't performing as well in TripAdvisor to all of a sudden take off and get a lot more exposure by actually, cutting only in the right areas, the areas that aren't going to be customer facing.
I have to add, it made me feel good because you're much smarter than I am. And I was with one of my clients, rather than somebody try to sit on top of the mountain and pontificate as to what the trend should be, in like you said, especially from a corporate level, you're half right, you're half wrong, because there's usually more wrong than right because there's so many other variables because of the tiers of the type of product. I'm helping them put together a questionnaire, a survey, a tech that's for them to answer their own question, where we're literally creating questions associated with their market as to what is this trend and what was your placement at this value. And so at the end of the questionnaire, they literally can have their own answer as to what they need to use in their budget process for marketing predictions based on what they have. Going back to recurring businesses, we created thresholds of how much percentage of business is recurring from last year, and it creates negatives. So there's a scorecard that goes off on the side that literally is negatives and positives associated with how they're answering the question. So at the end, they can determine whether they're planning for an up market based on the information they gave, or a down market, and where the down market is best represented.
And then what to do about it.
Instead
of just saying, okay, well, now I know.
Right.
Well, okay, what actions are you going to take? Instead of just saying, well, yeah, I predicted it. What are you going to do? Like, what are the things that are actually going to set you up for success in that long run? It's exactly the same types of things that we have, Lauren. Like, one example is we have some forecasts that are available for each market that looks at different industries within those markets. So, for example, in Boston, which areas are forecasting to increase and which ones are decreasing. So you can take a look at your corporate travel and say, okay, well, most of my business is coming from insurance and banking. That's where most of it's coming from. What's the prediction for next year? What are they saying about these industries? Is it going to shrink? Because regardless of how good my relationship is and what they're thinking and what they're telling me, what is it looking like? And if I'm heavily weighted in banking and insurance and that is forecasted to go down, I got to do something about that. I've got to figure out how I make up for potential losses that are going to be coming from that industry. So those are the types of things that are in that toolkit to be able to say, look at this. And, if you just get one indicator or 2 indicators of one direction, it's probably not enough to make a decision. But if all of a sudden out of your 20 item checklist of all the things that you're supposed to be looking at, if 12 of them are pointing in a certain direction, you got to do something. Don't just say, well, let's just sit back and wait a little bit longer to actually see it happen. Let's actually, take some action along and
I'm a strong proponent of taking it's almost like a portfolio management strategy to revenue management, right? Because each of your channels are like having a little bit of, you've got your bonds, you've got your small caps, you've got your large cap, and you don't necessarily want to go from an investment perspective, wow, that's a hot sector. Let's go all in on this. And then, you get whipsawed. You aren't going to be optimized. You've got to make sure that, as Neil said, you've got your base covered and you just don't abandon your group market because you go, yeah, those training sessions that happen, whatever, every summer. A great example was working with them. The MGM folks at the Mirage. They used to have a dance competition that was huge. It took like a week, and it was hundreds, if not thousands, of people coming in, and it was a horribly low price. But who wants to be in Las Vegas in the second week of July or something like that, right? It had been there for decades, but they had just renovated the hotel. And this was, I think, 2007, 2008. They finally went in and said, you know what, next year, not doing it. Or it was 2 years out, not going to happen. The rate's going up, it's tripling or something like that. What happened? Global financial crisis. Right? And fortunately, they timed that and they had time to come back and go, hey, just kidding. We really didn't mean that. They're back, and they still have that. And it was a very good lesson for them because they're like, we just, developed this, and revenue management was getting a little heady of like, hey, we can do this, and let's just burn the bridges. And who brought you there? Who made you this great hotel? And fortunately, they wound up recovering, and those relationships they had, it didn't wind up, just blowing up, and the sales team was able to kind of reestablish that and go, sorry, we're going to do this. And of course, the salespeople wound up making that a win. The evil company was going to do this, but I came through for you, and you're back, and this is great.
David in the chat made that point too. Experience and relationships carry you through the downturns, and it's very true. Your friends are your friends because you treat them. You don't abandon them in those relationships. That's go back to the sales conversation we had. Sales is relationship building. It's not just order taking. Unfortunately, some hotels and some positions, salespeople are just order takers until all of a sudden they have to become salespeople, and you find out whether they're good at it or not.
Can I take the Tim Peter role here? Hospitality industry. That's what we do. It's everybody.
Okay. On a couple of show notes. First off, Neil, you're a natural this dude. I mean, seriously, you got to come on the show more often just to be a voice to it. You're comfortable with the whole thing. It's like, and I'm also noticing we share something common. You have a little refrigerator. I have a little refrigerator. Already Magic.
Yes.
And we need to. Yeah, I know. We need to lose Ed, right? So, I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
Wait, is this being recorded?
and as another note, this is going to date me for it. It's a Martin Short thing where he does that. I look at me and I look marvelous. I'm looking at glasses on Hunter, and I see me and I look marvelous.
I know. I can see the reflection. It's like.
Yeah, I got him.
You're not so much. You got the Eddie glare, but Hunter's definitely no. I like seeing the glare in there for it and stuff.
You just have to look down, Hunter, so he can see the top of your head. That's
so that we
don't burn up so high.
Yeah, that's it. And you're being very patient. And thank you so much for being with us on this, because I know we're talking around stuff that's like, okay, so a couple of things. Robert, you had a couple of points you want to bring up. Hunter, Neil, I hope you stay with us, because the cool part about Hunter is with video and everything going on, it just, I'm stumbling through it. I do the different things and so forth. I'm seeing other people do different stuff, but Hunter is like on the lead edge, the bleed edge kind of stuff. And I'm just dying to get to him about some content about it as well. But Robert, you had some stuff you wanted to bring up.
I'll just three quick news topics. If anybody wants to comment, one, I'm closely following the battle between the OTAs and the hotel groups. So with the earnings releases, basically the hotel groups are saying, "Hey, look at it," and they've had huge signups in terms of their rewards programs and things like that. 5-fold increases in registrations, things like that. And the interesting comment was they said, "Oh yes," and because they're giving discounts to what turns out to be their highest value, highest yielding guests, that fundamentally the owners are the ones who are funding a lot of this battle. And a couple of them came out and said, "Oh yeah, the owners are 100% behind us and we're doing it." My question really winds up being, if there is a downturn, and we are in year 8 of at least for US North American market, we're in year 8 of a recovery. It's like, what's that? The second longest ever. If we go another year or two, it will be the longest recovery period in history for the economy. So there may be a downturn. So that's going to be a interesting point. I thought on the other side, it was very interesting that Booking.com came back and basically scolded the hotel industry and said, you're training your guests to look for deals and to buy on price. That is a bad habit. You shouldn't do that. And that, I think, since there is the torches and pitchforks, against the OTAs, and kind of the uprising of we'll get them. You look at the guys like Booking.com, they want a high ADR. They make more money when it's a strong ADR. There's actually strong alignment on that point. But I don't know if anyone has comments on the continuing saga. Oh, and the other thing, the OTAs basically said, nah, we didn't see anything. We don't see a blip where some of the hotel groups are like, oh, this is huge.
Holly wants to hear from you, Neil. She doesn't want to hear about me and Robert anymore.
Yeah.
She made real clear. She already told me it wasn't Martin Short. It was Billy Crystal, which is true. Totally forgot that. I was thinking Billy Crystal said Martin Short, and of course he also knows the character's name. So Holly is like spanking me on the side over here about everything that.
You see Billy Crystal on Jimmy Fallon where he did his old bit where he cuts out the mouth of the character and does his impression with the magazines.
Awesome. Yep. Funny. All good. Yes.
I don't have much to add to what Robert was saying. I'm pretty much on board. I think it's not often that I'm agreeing, I think, with the OTAs, but in this I do agree. It's not smart to be trying to buy your customers with huge 20-25% discounts to try to bring them over. There's other ways to do it. So this is one way, and they're seeing some success at getting people in. But if it's only on price, just like what we were talking about, revenue management can do a lot of things on price. Many years ago, I remember starting a program with a hotel company and generating tons of business coming in. And I had a marketing guy come up to me and said, Neil, how did you do that? Like, you didn't put a single marketing dollar behind that, and all of a sudden it's the biggest producer in the company. I said, I priced it right, and I put it in front of the guest, and they bought it.
What do you know?
Yeah, I mean, you can get a whole lot of demand from something if you make the price super cheap, but it doesn't mean it's the right decision. And if you're putting it across the board, Robert, you're right. I mean, a lot of these guests, they're not actually looking for the discount. You're just giving it to them for very little reason.
Absolutely.
So yeah, I think it's probably the wrong trend. I think it's the wrong way to go. But I think it's likely to continue because they're looking at the wrong KPIs.
Yeah. And the downturn, it gets ugly. The worst thing that I really look at is, and you said, you're giving them 20%. I know one of the major hotel groups, the discount's more like 2%. So you're also kind of building this expectation of getting, hey, I'm going to get 5 or 10 or 15, and it's only 2. All of a sudden, you've kind of created an atmosphere for artificial dissatisfaction, which is not the greatest scenario either. So the hotel companies have to be very careful of how they toe this line, because they could be training bad behavior. But
you got David and Holly both agreeing on all counts with it. David made some very good points about the fact that it's discount driven. Look at Groupon as an example of failures, just to be driving to that point. I use more food and beverage examples. Early bird specials, once you start them, you can never stop them, because that literally is the audience you've created for. But I would actually make a larger point to the flaw in the strategy of direct business by offering discounts, by creating a membership relationship, is the lack of optimizing that relationship you're building. If you're only doing it for the discount, which most people are, you're not optimizing now the unique relationship you have with them because they had to sign in with you. That's the part I think is getting missed the most. It's okay to offer an incentive to create the relationship, but then exercise what that relationship can yield for you, not just the fact of benefit. And we had this as an active conversation last week on the show, about the value of membership is the benefits, the feeling good that it creates, not necessarily the freebies and so forth, but the unique feel that you have for it. Holly points out that it's a matter of giving good service on top of making somebody feel special. You make somebody feel special, but you still give crappy service. But it's the combination of the two. It's not just the dollar that drove them. It's the relationship, because like you said, Neil, it's not the discount that got them there. It's just you're giving it to them anyway, and it's just the reason for making a choice. So good point for that.
Yeah, and then what ends up happening a lot of times with this is that those things get so big, all of a sudden the price point that you have, the 20% discount that you're giving, is really your price. And all of a sudden that price that you had out there is not real. So, I agree. Discounts, for the most part, they don't work. But the one thing you do have to be careful with that is you have to make sure that you're priced right to begin with. So if you're offering the discounts because you're priced wrong, and that's really getting you to the right price point, do a price analysis, make sure that you're priced correctly, and then start from there.
And I
Right,
think that's where
because
digital marketing fell short.
because to maintain that discount or whatever for your frequent guests and the people who are coming in, all of a sudden, there's pressure to artificially pop up the prices to a point where they aren't the right price in the market, and then all of a sudden you're sending the same message to people who haven't used your hotel, aren't familiar with you, who might really love your product, and all of a sudden you've done a very effective job of shifting your share, that share somewhere else.
Well, I think that was also the first downfall of digital marketing relationship with revenue management, is they kept coming with a handout. What can you offer me?
Yeah.
What can you give me as a discount? And so the relationship was based on what the discount value was. And revenue management is trying to optimize, and digital marketing is trying to justify. Like, hey, I'm here for a reason because I can go over and get business, but the only way I can do it is by offering them a discount. And they were very unimaginative. I mean, Dave made some very good points, and then Holly does the same thing, where Holly says, but it seems like the problem started earlier. Why are our loyal members booking on OTAs to begin with? If you have the relationship with them, they should be booking direct for other reasons. Very true.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, we fall down on technology. The methodology of booking is much more streamlined in the UI experience with the OTAs right now than it is with our own properties, unfortunately. And it leads itself to a problem.
Better sites.
Yeah.
People like it better. They like the experience better on booking.com than they do on brand.com.
Yeah.
Yep.
They get
They're
more
better at
information,
merchandising.
more relevant for them to make a better decision.
And how many loyalty programs do people belong to, right? You look at the overall stats of people have 38, membership cards in their life or something like that.
We now
But
have
they only
apps
work with
so that you don't have to carry all the cards. It's all stored now in your phone because you can't fit them all in your wallet.
Yep.
And so, but the ones who are dominating are the ones like Starbucks. Starbucks, wow, right? I mean, they're getting, I think it's over 40% of their business now is getting transacted on their app, right? I mean, really powerful stuff. One of my favorites, Scott, and I'm losing his last name with L2.
It's age.
It is age. It is age. But clinical professor at NYU, he does a great little video every Wednesday. He made a great one this week, which basically said Domino's now has more IT staff than marketing staff, things like that. He goes, everything is an IT company now, right? It's just they have different front ends.
Yeah.
So I think the hotel industry should probably be the last one who really goes into that, but it really is how you work with this data, and the loyalty stuff is powerful if they can work the funnel of getting these first time loyalty members to become returning guests and then repeat guests, then that will be a very, very successful strategy. I haven't seen a lot of that part of it taking place. Maybe they're working on it, and it's
in that area right now. It's still the carrot and the stick. Neil, you made the point. I don't want to follow Airline's example. Airline's example is the perfect one of bad membership. That's where membership first came from, and it's still the same in the 60s. Let's keep extending the stick for the carrot that we keep frequency and durability. To get a small reward. Not worth it.
Again, history. I was there, 1981.
Wait, what is Tim? You know what Tim tells you about this time? Can you tell a Cornell graduate in a room? Oh, yeah. Can you tell where going on? No, don't worry. They'll tell you.
I didn't mention my academic pedigree.
I know.
No, the American Airlines Advantage, and I've been a member since I think June of 1981. Right. It started out
propeller to get things going, or was that?
Yeah, exactly. No, it started out. There's an area within Dallas that's Las Colinas, and they had a little cable company, and a couple of American executives lived in there, and they started doing these directed ads because it was a gated community. It was pretty affluent, and that's located close to the airport. You had all these big companies moving their headquarters there, so they started doing these Tuesday sort of specials and things like that. Right, that was the beginning of what's now the kind of what was the Tuesday emails, and still pricing strategies for airlines still revolve around Tuesdays, weirdly enough. But they came out with the Advantage program, kind of tied onto that, which was Delta was coming into Dallas in a big way, and American did not want, and they had already successfully legislated Southwest into only operating out of Love Field a few years before, so they really wanted to defend it. So what did they do? They used Sabre, because they owned Sabre, to build this wall, which was the Advantage program. It was a short-term tactical thing to keep Delta out because they knew Delta technologically couldn't compete. They would have to spend a fortune to go do something like this. And it had started from this technology where they were kind of tracking people from this little Cablevision thing on Tuesdays, right, to get the, who was getting the ad sort of thing. So they did that. What they didn't plan on was United looked at this and went, oh my God, this is a big strategic initiative that's going to be global. United reacted and spent a fortune to react. And American was like, what the hell are you? No, don't do that. And all of a sudden, these programs, came into play, and then the strategy completely shifted. But it was accidental. It was not this big strategic. Okay. Let's go, corner the market.
When you moved to Dallas, how did you bring the whole library with you? Was it how many trucks did you bring? This library of knowledge that you pull the volume off the shelf. I mean. I got rid of a lot of stuff. Right? All right. I got rid of a lot of stuff, but I've got a lot of stuff digital now. But Evernote clippings are pretty deep. But I was there. I was opening for Four Seasons. We were opening the Mandalay in Dallas, and that's where. And actually, to tie this back into Fairmont and sales conversation, the way we opened that hotel was one key strategy. We hired a guy named Mike Stagel as director of sales who had been at the Fairmont. And Fairmont had been the only 5-star hotel in Texas for the previous decade, or something. And he brought his book of business to us, and that was the strategy.
And so I think it's past the statute of limitations now that we can sue.
Yeah. Four Seasons based on Fairmont.
Okay, no, I've got another Four Seasons Fairmont one. Okay, I'm working in national sales in New York. Neil, you'll love this one.
Today's episode has been brought to you by Four Seasons.
No.
Back before there were 4 seasons, there were 3 seasons.
Exactly. No, okay. And this is back in old school Fairmont. Before Fairmont was a little hotel company. They had five properties, right?
A small wooded cabin in northern Canada. Okay.
Yeah. I'm sitting in New York. In national sales, and one of the salespeople comes in and drops this massive book of wide green bar computer paper on my desk. And he goes, look at this. And the thing's like 8 inches thick. It's like, what the hell is that? He goes, this is every meeting Fairmont has had in the last 5 years. It was like, wow, because it was their national sales database, which they did a very good job of tracking, numbers of rooms booked, numbers picked up, the contact name, the organization, the phone number.
So right now, legal at Four Seasons is getting phone calls from people from Fairmont going,
statute of limitations is way out. Okay.
We're watching that thing on the internet, and it seems like we kind of got a head start.
This is not the best part of the story. The best part of the story is part B. I go, wow, this is amazing. Where'd you go? Oh, can't tell you. It fell off the back of a truck type thing, right? Classic New York. Not going to tell you where it came from. So I call up the LA sales office and go, hey, Michelle, you interested in that? We've got something pretty interesting. She goes, from Fairmont. She goes, well, how old is it? And I look it up and go, it's from December. This was, again, it was like maybe July. She goes, I got the first quarter one. So they published a quarter. She already had it.
Okay, so we talked about Omni and Kimpton getting security leaks these past couple of weeks. Paramount, you might want to look. There might be still a leak.
Well, this was back when we used to have the dinosaur suite where you got the views of the brontosaurus out the window.
Yeah,
things have been upgraded a little bit.
Yeah. But that's what they did. They printed out a sheet. Somebody probably wherever the corporate office was, would print out the huge database of stuff, ship it out to every hotel and every national sales office a quarter. And then what are you going to do? The recycling wasn't real big back then.
Okay. But before we give it over to Hunter, I'll add one little story to that. And this is when I was a food and beverage director in Houston. We're sitting on our back loading dock, and a new hotel got built right behind us, and their loading dock faced our loading dock. And this is back when I used to smoke. Bad thing. And I'm out there, and I noticed that they're dumping big bins of paper into their trash. So I wander over, and it's all their BEOs. I'm like, huh. So I grab all the BEOs, start calling Mrs. Smith. You just had a wonderful event at such and such. You know what? We're the such and such hotel. We'd love to offer you the same deal. So anyway, this went on for a few weeks. Business picked up. Then I got a call from my GM. It's like, Lauren, because I got lazy. I started having the houseman go over and grab it for me because I didn't have the time to do it myself. And say, you grabbing BEOs out of such and such hotels bin? Not anymore. Hey,
Yep.
all right. So, Hunter, you have been more than patient with our dialogue. Thank you so very much for
Learning a
hanging
lot.
around.
Before Hunter, I have two pieces of just their news items that only I will just
name
do
the news statements. All right.
as snippets. Number one is the Amazon Web Services conference was this past week. One of the examples was a major hotel group is working with Echo and Alexa to put them in the guest rooms.
Which
So
is
that will be
very, because that's what we had in the presentation at High Tech. So yeah.
Yeah. So
Okay.
that's the bit. Well, but Amazon's coming out with a business or enterprise model of the Echo, and so one of the examples was hotel room automation. Yeah, automation, which could be very interesting. The other one was second quarter results from Google and Facebook.
Yes.
I think advertising spend across all channels, right, went up 5% or something. I don't have the number for just online. But between Google and Facebook, they were responsible for 92% of the incremental year-over-year increase in online advertising. So 92% went to Google and Facebook.
I have something
Okay,
to
so
say about
along
it.
these lines, thinking about Amazon Echo in a hotel room, it's way too early to be putting Echo in a hotel room, in my
Mhm.
opinion. But so there was a post today that I was reading that was about a little over 100 years ago. Some artists did renderings of what they thought the year 2000 was going to be like.
I
So,
remember that. I was there.
So this is the artist. It doesn't really come through all that well, but this is what they thought aero cabs were going to be all over the place.
No.
Basically, every picture, almost like half the pictures, were people flying around in some way.
Mhm.
And this is another one. This is an interesting one. This is what the woman's bathroom was going to look like. Lots of different gadgets and things, and powdering your nose and things like that, all by this machine that would do it for you. I think the point there is just. Guests want, what do they want right now? They want the same type of things that they have at their house. So if they have Netflix, they want to be able to watch Netflix on the TV. Like that's what they want. Not enough homes have Echo yet. They don't care. Hasn't taken off. So before hotels get into this type of thing, they should just sit back and wait, not be on the bleeding edge, wait for it to become commonplace in the house.
Mhm.
And that's when, because some of our hotels right now, for example, we have iPads, right? iPads that you can order room service on. People don't like it. Like they end up going, I'm just going to pick up the phone because I don't understand this. I don't get it yet. So until it becomes more commonplace and more out there, I think that's the point where hotels should jump on board. Until then,
There's such
I just finished a project looking at in-room automation, high-speed internet, kind of the state across the industry, and some pretty interesting things not happening in terms of just in terms of raw bandwidth being delivered to hotel rooms. I actually have an interesting graph that I will be publishing at some point, but basically you look at here's what the standards are for minimum standards for the hoteliers, right? And it's painfully low, and it's not sufficient to support even streaming standard definition Netflix for one device per room, right? So it's a problem. And again, it's what's the brand doing versus what are the owners doing, who's paying for this, and that's going to be a big issue because let them cast it to screen. Well, that's great. You better need bigger pipes, or you've got to go set up some licensing things. How do you authenticate and validate lots of issues? And the hotel industry is behind the curve, and that is the number one topic people want to have. They want their high-speed internet access.
If Light 5 comes up, it'll negate some of those needs. But I think you made the point, Robert, a couple of shows back. The greatest invention that came to hotel rooms of recent is the Bode shower curtain screen hole.
It was. It is.
People want the same things that we want. They want good water pressure, hot water, clean rooms. I mean, cover the fundamentals like Maslow's 6 hierarchies. You kind of progress up to.
But I really think someone needs to do a survey with a sufficient sample size, which asks how many people would trade off, certain things like like hot water for high-speed internet access, and I think the number is going to be surprisingly high. They'll skip. Do we don't have any hot water for the full stay? How long is the length of stay? I think there's going to be all sorts of little nuances there, because one of the stats that I included in this report was, 4% of the people said that they would trade bathing for a month of internet access, right? If you cut them off, they would give up bathing for.
So are we?
That's too many. That's way too many.
Are we going to pull a Jimmy Kimmel on Hunter?
No, go.
We're going to go over. It's like, hey, and thanks for everything.
Right. Oh yeah.
Unfortunately, we have to pull guys back in. Not able to make the show today.
Yeah.
All right, Hunter.
Hunter, you have the next 2 hours. The next 2 hours are all yours.
Oh, wow.
We are going to interrupt you. Just so you know, we are going to interrupt the hell out of you, okay?
That's awesome.
And we're going to ask you really random questions for no apparent reason, just to make it a little bit more interesting. But Neil, thanks for hanging with us on this, because I know that from talking with Michael at Fairmont, that we were talking about 360 videos for a while and stuff like that. So the topic is real. Obviously, we're on the show. I mean, video is video. But Hunter, it is yours to control and to converse. Go ahead, dude. All you.
Wait, where do you want me to start? I mean, that's such a huge topic.
I guess really from a practicality, usability of video. I mean, people stumbling through this, people are like me, hey, I'm doing video this, video that. But you're producing, creating results. It's one thing to do it and it's novelty and it's cute. Mm-hmm. It's another thing to do it and it's productive and useful. Yeah. So I would love your take on how should, you have Neil. Okay, he can talk to a lot of people in organizations, say, you need to go and figure this stuff out because this is what other people are doing well. I do it with clients. I know Robert does it with clients. So, and I'm sure with a few people we have floating around listening to us, there's always interest in what can I do with this stuff and how should I get it done?
Yeah, well, I mean, one thing for us at Flip2 is just thinking about what do we want to achieve, right? And I think a lot of people think when they hear video, we're just going to, put these video out for marketing, but it really extends way beyond that, right? It's helping our sales team, it's helping our account managers, it's helping even in the future HR and getting new employees coming on board and talking about our culture. And it also goes to where are you sharing these videos, right? If you're sharing these videos on social media, making sure that these videos speak to the platform that you're using, right? So a video on Facebook should be different than a video on Twitter, and a video on, your blog should be different as well. So it's just really focusing on all those different aspects and making sure you're just executing.
Mm-hmm. What, from a tools point of view, I mean, we're doing Facebook Live, we do that as a simulcast to this. Mm-hmm. I can recommend personally that consistency is the key to most success with this. If you're there with content that you've identified persistently at the same time, that you will get people beginning to follow because they know they can count on you to be there. It's like when doing the podcast, same thing. So what are some things like that? And then again, tool wise, I mean, it doesn't have to be this major production, I don't imagine, or does it? What do you think?
I mean, one thing I've actually heard a pretty cool, I guess, comparing this content and getting noticed and being content famous or whatever, right? It's kind of the way they talked about it was like buying a lottery ticket, right? Your odds are really small, right? To hit this golden ticket. But the point is you can increase your chances, right? So making better content is kind of, synonymous and buying more lottery tickets or stuff like that. So it's really tough. Because there's a lot of people who have really great content who you just don't even know about, right? But like you said, it's all about being consistent and putting it out there. And for tools, I mean, gosh, where do you start? We really want to keep things simple here. So we're really heavy on using ScreenFlow and showing our product firsthand and getting people to, experience what we're all about, what our platform's all about, in a way that's so refreshing, right? It's a lot easier to consume and a lot easier to understand than a lot of what people are putting out there.
Mm-hmm. I see hotels, best intended salespeople, best intended just staffers wanting to share the experience of their hotel, and they'll do a Facebook Live or they'll do a Periscope or they will do a recording. and just some fundamentals that they mess up with. They swing around with the camera, or they aim it in one direction, but they're talking about something that the camera's not aimed at or something. What are some things, if we're having people listening right now saying, okay, look, I want video. It always catches my eye when I see video in the platforms, whether it be Facebook, LinkedIn, Twitter, whatever, or on websites. What are some things that you would say are best practices for a hotel to say, okay, if you're going to do this, then this is what you should do, and this is how you should handle it, or start here and then grow here? What are some things?
Well, again, I think it really depends on the hotel and your goals. I mean, are you asking more of like what type of stuff should you use as like devices, or what type of content should you create? Like what exactly?
Yeah, any and all. Because I mean, is it just start as a phone with a camera on it, or and do you pick a platform first and keep with it before you go to another platform? I mean, if you had a client come to you and say, hey, look, I want to get this in the space, where do you put a stick in the sand and start the process?
I mean, I think Facebook's a great place to start, especially like the native Facebook, the video on Facebook, then the whole native stuff is getting pretty awesome. Plus, like the advertisement on Facebook is nuts. I mean, they know so much about you, and hotels can target so many people in a way that's really, can't really done in other platforms as well as it can be on Facebook. Also, like making videos is increasingly getting cheaper and cheaper, and there's more and more people doing it. I know, I mean, I've been doing photography and video for 5 years now, and the market's so saturated. So finding someone who can do video and do it well is not that hard, honestly. But that doesn't mean you want to do it cheap either, because you want someone who knows what they're doing. So looking at the work they've done in the past and just getting an idea of what they've done is really important as well, because you don't want an amateur putting out a video that's could affect your brand. I mean, it's super important to make sure they know what they're doing.
I put a link in the sidebar, since I mentioned L2, who does, I guess I shouldn't mention them because I do a lot of work with Focusrite, but hey, they do some great stuff. They just published this week this great little video platform diagnostic tool. Very cool. And it basically has sliders, and it has, let me just count, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 dimensions, which are duration, publishing cadence, content creation budget, importance of influencers, targeting capabilities, millennial engagement, ability to drive organic reach, which are really kind of pillars of this. And it has little sliders, and you can kind of say, oh, well, I'm thinking of doing something that's short duration, I've got a big budget or whatever. But a lot of these things are kind of logical. You go short duration at Snapchat, that kind of goes to Instagram, then to Facebook, and then if it's longer, YouTube would be good. But and then same thing for a budget. You have no money, it's probably Snapchat.
Yeah.
Then go so those kind of go along the same lines, but ability to drive organic reach is more Facebook first, right? Then and Instagram's probably last, or I'm sorry, Instagram's probably high, Facebook might be low on that sort of thing, right? So Got that one backwards.
I mean, hotels, not all hotels, but the bigger brands have a ton of money to throw at this stuff. But there's so much that goes into video because there's so many different platforms. There's so many different, who are you talking to, right? If you're talking to millennials, you'll probably want to focus on something like Snapchat, because so many of us are on there, and we're kind of ditching these other platforms just because we want this content that's easy to consume and easy to really like I said, consume, I guess. But
Neil, you put a link up there, and I did a quick peruse on the article with it. I have to agree with you, because I think social, I always was a contention that social was never meant for brand. It was kind of the antithesis, because social is the individual identity of whether it be a business entity or an individual, and brand is this homogenous representation. And I know Marriott failed early on when they said, okay, all Courtyards, you can't have your own Facebook page. We're going to have one Courtyard Facebook page. And that was a disaster, because you can reflect the personas of all the properties. And to the point that Procter & Gamble, the article you pointed, Neil, brand, it's that micro moment discussion that Google keeps talking about. Just because you're putting out your content targeted to people that historically use it, doesn't mean they're in the mindset of consuming it. So Neil, you post the article, by all means, make a comment to it. And then Hunter, what do you think about the fact that you need to be more precise about your strategy when it comes to using video and so forth? Neil?
Yeah, I think it's just kind of there. I mean, what's actually interesting, the very end of the article, it references how Priceline is doubling down on it.
Mhm.
But yeah, I think it's something to keep in mind. I think that it's gotten a little bit too targeted, and that's what's preventing it from being successful. And that's what the article is talking about in terms of what Procter and Gamble's doing.
Yeah, no, I think it all comes back to what's your strategy. It's not just, hey, we made a video that that's going to target millennials. Well, what are you saying to millennials that's different or unique or might be something of interest to them?
Yes,
and it is. And there is a lot of money. I mean, the Marriott Content Studio is developing some great stuff. They're French. They're doing 20-minute Hollywood quality.
It's nuts.
It is nuts. I don't know what their ROI is. I mean, they're producing some great stuff. I'm sure it's going to win a ton of awards. I'm not sure if it's going to drive a lot of business, but if you sit through the 20 minutes, you want to go to Paris. It's a great place. It really truly captures the romance of the city. It doesn't sell the hotels aggressively. It just things happen around the hotel. So they're really smart with how they're doing it. But boy, the direct ROI and then you have something like that happens in terms of the terrorist attacks in France where the business is down. That may have just wiped out their entire ROI from doing that. Which is just horrible. But some really interesting stuff being done. But again, tying it back to the revenue management side, what is the return on the ad spend and the creative development and all of that? Targeting what markets, what personas for what benefit that ties into the hotel experience and hospitality. If guests come to your hotel and do something, how much better is their life going to be, or what's the best thing that they can go back and go, that was great, and to tell their friends, right?
I think I would add to this conversation to the point, and referring back to the article you posted, Neil, even the image that they posted on the article about the Febreze and so forth. I buy this stuff. I don't buy this stuff all the time. I certainly don't buy it because I see an ad for it. I buy it when I run out of it. So the component that's missing out of this process is timing. Again, going back to Google's micro moments, you can sell generators. You're in a high demand when it's the middle of a hurricane season, and you're in low demand when it's not. And same too with proximity. The variables that need to be added to these conversations for success. If a brand's going to like a Procter and Gamble, or let's just say for hotels like a Marriott, for them to be successful, if you're in location proximity and you're not within the range of your living establishment, like Facebook allows you to proximity market, and you have 3 categories of audiences that you can choose from. Those that are within the radius that you've defined on your ad, those are locals. Then you have those that are within 99 miles. They're not travelers. They're outside of the net, but they're within 99 miles, which means they're drive market. And then there's what's called travelers, which they're originally from beyond 99 miles. So even making the distinction of what audience you're targeting the message to, if you as a Marriott brand product want to target in a timely way somebody with video or with any other high engagement presentation, due to the audience that's most likely to be responding to it, like the travelers. They say, oh my gosh, that hotel's in an area. Okay, if I haven't made a hotel choice, within 24 hours or something, then that might be a choice for me, kind of thing. Just broadcasting because you can finite that I'm a previous purchaser of your product is not timing it for me, and it's certainly not including the extra benefit of location as value option.
Yeah, I think a lot of companies too, they ask too much in their videos, or they ask you to buy something, and it's like, a lot of people, when I go to Facebook, I'm not looking to buy something necessarily. I'm looking to be informed, to be entertained, do all that kind of stuff. So having that aspect as well when you're creating the video is like really important.
Well, and you look at success in a lot, not necessarily the consumer packaged goods area, but in a lot of others, how-to videos are really successful. When people are out there looking at buying, doesn't matter, stereo speakers or fish tank or who knows whatever they're looking at, and hotels can do a great job. I think Intercontinental did a really good job with. I don't know if they're really doing it more, but they had a little thing for their concierges, right? And this was a number of years ago, and I judged the Adrian Awards, and they won, they won that year as the best of show for digital marketing. But it was all the concierges kind of personally introducing you to the destination, and just here are the really cool things just right at the hotel, and this is all we know about. And it was tremendous. Did really well, and it was video based. It was very low budget. It was not really professionally produced. It was more like somebody hanging onto an iPhone, kind of following them around. But it had a level of authenticity also, which was really good. This was a real person who's an expert in the community, and most of them ended with, "And if you have any questions, even if you aren't staying with us, give us a call."
Mm-hmm.
And you go, "Wow, that's really generous and nice."
Well, this actually goes back to a conversation you had, Neil, about this discontinuity between digital marketing and revenue management, that during peak season, marketing's throwing out offers that can't be sold. And this is a great translation of saying, okay, we can't sell anything right now, but we can certainly provide value of what we are to the people that either wish they were here or were thinking about being here but didn't come here. And we do a video. We take Hunter and say, okay, Hunter, we're doing situational videos about things from the events that are going on, the activities surrounding us, things not to miss when you're here, places to eat when you get the chance. And it's all building that demand desire to say, okay, I can't go now, but let me get connected to them in their membership or their whatever method they're giving me, and let me follow them so that next year I might be early enough to book this next time and take advantage of the demand that I'm definitely wanting to be there for. So that could be a replacement for it.
Yeah.
And if you're working in Neil's sector of the market for the high-end properties, I mean, that's it. You want them to go, God, for that event, I want to be in New Orleans for Mardi Gras or whatever, to go do whatever. I want to say, let's go. Or, let's make this happen. Or I want to be there when they do the Fairmont New Orleans does amazing stuff in terms of the holiday season, in terms of decorating the hotel. It's spectacular. And those sorts of things are their own little unique demand generators, sort of thing. Yeah. One's a citywide event, one's what the hotel does. Those sorts of things can be communicated very well with video. And then again, how do you deliver it to the right market and who's going to consume it?
Yeah, and you want to be careful of yes, you want to provide content, obviously, that people want to view. That's number one. But you have to be careful of not being just the CVB. Right. Because Absolutely. If you're the one that's paying for this video, you've got to find a way. It can't be overly commercial. If you're too blunt in the way that you do it, it's not going to work. But there needs to be some sort of a tie back, at least some of the time, because otherwise, Robert, to your point, there is no ROI. That you're right. If you're just trying to get more traffic to your destination, you're spending a lot of money to feed people into people say, okay, that's great. I want to go to New Orleans. Now I go to TripAdvisor and I take a look. I don't care that it was the Intercontinental that did it. Right. Yep. I'm going to go and find what the best hotel in New Orleans is that I can have the best experience. So you need to put some sort of a sales pitch in there, very quiet, so it's not overt, because people will see right through that. But there has to be something in there in order to get them to buy in. Otherwise, all of this effort's going to be for naught, because you're not going to get the buy-in from revenue management. We're not going to get the buy-in from all of these constituents. Say, we're not going to give you money to do this video because we don't see the benefit. It's not generating anything. We'll spend the money somewhere else.
I had a judge for Hotel Magazine, their social media thing for 2016. There was a couple of neat hotels in APAC that were doing some neat stuff. One did their dinner specials each day with the chef describing it very quickly, and it was persistently at the same time doing the same stuff, very casual, very hand, you can know it was being a phone that was being moved over the dishes, he's doing it and so forth. But it was persistent, and they always had a great attendance to, they had metrics that showed that their meal periods increased by X percentage, because it was a way of engaging people locally to come into the restaurant, which has always been a bane of hotel restaurants, is to create the local market for themselves. The other is that they were doing videos that were a story creation. Where, to your point, Neil, it wasn't so much about being the CVB of selling the event itself. It was the unique location of the hotel in relationship to the event that they were talking about. And none of the early videos, it was a cyclic development of social, was they were just talking about the history of the event. Their hotel in relationship to the convenience of it was just a added conversation that grew in percentage of the message, so that by the time the booking window for the event was rolling in, there was a very strong conversation. Videos like, hey, and one of them was literally walking out the door going, look, we're out front the door, lean over, there's the entrance to the such and such event. But it was like a very tangible, like, this is where you want to stay. And the neat part was they also added in their conversation, which I thought was a great touch, what you need to do now for when you need to book when. Hey guys, you know what? We sell out every time for this event in February. It's July. This is the time to book, because we have our early book thing now. And if you get it, you're locked and done. You don't have to mess with it. Don't be missing it like you did this year. Book now. And it's a hard sell, but it's a helpful hard sell. It's like, hey, this is the window that you have. when the Super Bowl hits a city, I would imagine a hotel should be popping and going, hey, you better buy rack now because it's only going to go up, that kind of thing.
Or bundle in other services and then target your frequent guests, right? And give them the the insiders treatment where you go, hey guys, here's something, and it has nothing to do with a discount. It's you now have access and we can provide you something that you can't get other places. It's going to be amazing and we love you and we want you to be a part of it because you're such a great guest. Those are really effective ways to do it. Mm-hmm. But again, you've got to have that relationship and the engagement and really understand the guest that, yes, that's the person who's targeted to show up at the Super Bowl. And it's not just getting sprayed to everyone who ever stayed in your hotel.
Yeah, I think so. When I went to Dubai earlier this year, and I was training for a Century bike ride. So I knew that I needed to do bike riding while I was there. Century bike ride, 100 miles in a day.
Yeah. In Dubai, that's
yes,
good beef training
early in the morning.
Not good for hill training, but for
no. But dunes, they've got dunes. But I wanted to see what it was like riding on the road. So I was looking for video of people that took their camera while they were riding on the streets and getting some advice. There were some forums, but I said, I want to see it. I want to, feel what that is. So potentially like opportunities like that, within Fairmont, we've got bikes at our hotels. So what better way to pair that up to say, let's send someone out on a bike, do some video to show what like biking is around and show that we provide this as a service. So not only are we giving you the information of the video, but also letting you know you can have one of our BMW bikes to go on this ride. So you don't have to rent a bike while you're here.
Yeah. And it's a cool bike. There you go. It's a BMW bike too.
But those little video snippets to something Hunter said earlier, those video snippets are the color, the flavor, the sizzle, to coin an old marketing phrase, to the process of decision making. It's like, okay, I got a view of what it's like to be doing this, and I got a view of what the value is that I didn't put into the equation of my decision. Holly asked a question. And this is, I guess, Hunter, maybe you might have an answer to this. Mm-hmm. Is there any data on how many people don't listen to video and only watch it to listen to the audio?
Yeah, no, that's actually a really good point. I mean, I don't know any numbers off the top of my head, but I actually had an example I wanted to share. It was from something that was trending today on Twitter, and it was World Elephant Day was trending, right? And I came across some of the top tweets and looking at what they were. It was this one, which you see, like what Holly was saying, is like so much text in this video. You could literally consume it without ever listening to it. And I think that's a really important thing to take notice to. And I know that's one thing that we want to do at Flip2 is try to find ways of doing that a little more strategically in our social media. Just because people are scrolling through these feeds, they're not going to stop, click it, listen, go. They're going like these words catch their eyes, right? So, and then you go into them actually listening to it.
And this is my podcast because of that people don't often get to watch but prefer to listen, and podcasts have been great about getting a high capture rate and keeping it within 20 minutes and so forth. But to your point, I mean, this is a whole different way of consuming data. I mean,
yeah.
And that's an interesting video, which I have just watched while we're doing this multitasking. I've learned a few things about elephants at the same time, and that's a really interesting approach.
It's elephants, man.
I have a question also for you, Hunter. It's like, okay, I'm a huge fan of Google Places.
Except now here's a problem, right? I actually clicked on the link to go to CNN. I'm in Firefox, and what do I get? Boom, this plugin is vulnerable, should be updated, activate Adobe Flash, check for updates. So I can't watch. All of a sudden, because of the platform, I can't see the video. When I accomplished what they want of clicking through, I've been disappointed. So another kind of attention to detail of how to make that work.
So Hunter, I'm a fan of Google Places. I love the fact that early on, people used to come to people like Neil or anybody else and saying, hey, we're a Google authorized photographer. We'll come into your property and we'll shoot all these pictures in 360 that will be put on Google Maps, and you can connect them so people can see your interior. And I only charge this much. It was kind of like a Wild West. I mean, you can get a $500 rate and a $5,000 rate for the same project. It was just walk in your door.
Yeah.
But now Google Places has it that not only can you post your own 360s to a map, but you can also now hotspot them so that you can be in your hotel and take all your 360s of your lobby, your meeting space, rooms, and so forth, and connect the photos and so forth. Any insights as to the value proposition that you may have seen or anything that you've heard back on on the value of it. And Neil asked the same question to you as well. I mean, is any of the properties take advantage of the fact that they now literally can do it for themselves for free?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I've seen more and more people doing it. I know it was really cool even before I started working at Flip2 and looking at companies, and these companies would have these videos, or not videos, but even the 360 photos or whatever, where you can go and I don't know, feel like you're there and you're part of it. You're kind of getting this inside look at this company and where you could potentially work or visit and all this stuff. I honestly don't know too much about it and how hotels have been using it and stuff like that, or how our customers have been using it. But I think it's really cool and something that people should be doing. Even like 360 videos, like that, I think is still like an emerging market, but you see people doing it in this really creative way, and I think it could be really beneficial for people to kind of explore that and see how they can do something creative there.
Neil, do you got any of your hotels using it at the time, or?
You know what? It could be. Unfortunately, I don't know the answer to that. It's probably a little bit too early on for it to come across my desk to realize if it's but I'll keep an eye out for it, and maybe on a future podcast.
Yeah, go do a interior walkthrough of the Royal York or the Queen Elizabeth, or
I can't say
you got all sorts of great places.
I can't say the exact client. I had an Australian relationship that they Australian travel is aspirational. You usually do it when young, when you have a backpack, and older when your kids are out of home, because it's so expensive to bring the whole family kind of thing. And the U.S. has always been wanting to travel to Australia, but there's this age gap between late 20s and early 50s that is the trend is very low for them to actually make it to Australia. So actually using Spring Engage, their websites, we quantified that anybody that went to the accommodations page, the local information page, at a criteria of at least a dozen plus times, but never booked, were probably never able to go over that hump. They just couldn't commit to actually purchasing a travel plan. And the two feeder markets in the U.S. that were the biggest highlights for us were San Francisco and Los Angeles. So we targeted a high threshold that people that went but never booked, based on the repetitiveness of their visits to the website, we physically sent them Google Cardboards with the QR code that brought them to a site that we did the 360 videos on. And we did 5 360 videos of Sydney. And one was in the entrance of the lobby of the hotel where the concierge stood, where it's like the person literally, what happens, you get the Google Cardboard in the mail, says, hey, we'd love to see you here, blah, blah, blah. Scan this QR code to download the app, and then go to these links to go over and watch these videos. And we brought them to Taronga Zoo, top of the bridge, by the Sydney Opera House and so forth. And what they did was, if they were standing there doing it in 360. Mm-hmm. So we sent it to 100 of these people, 64 of them ended up converting.
That's amazing.
And it's a staggering number. And because what they were able to experience was, I got to go here. They already were interested. It was apparent by their frequency of visits to the site. They just could never make whatever decision process was necessary to pull the trigger. But that augment, and can you scale that? No, but it was a great testament to the value proposition of what the 360s could provide. That the other is, and this is just from a personal experience of mine, I had the privilege of being over to go to Shanghai recently for a client, and I did a lot of 360 videos. We had a friend locally here who unfortunately recently got diagnosed with a medical condition that prevents their travel. So I took the 360 videos, and how you have people come over for your vacation slides, I went over and made them look through the Google Cardboard.
That's awesome.
And see what we did, and it's not the whole vacation. No, it's not this, but you know what? It was just an experience difference. It just was one of those
exactly. Things. You're offering someone a different experience. It's refreshing for consumers to see that.
Yeah. So it's just, there's a value to your point, Hunter. There's a value to the 360 stuff. It is in its infancy. It's still yet to be adopted full scale. But it's still a neat thing that I think is valuable in the proposition. And look at Pokemon Go. We had that as a topic a few weeks back. That augmented reality interchange is only going to grow. There's only going to be more value propositions.
Oh, yeah.
Looking through a screen. I think Ed or Tim brought up the fact that wearables, I think Ed has an aversion to anybody that uses Bluetooth, I think was his strongest point. He calls them geeks or stops talking to them or something if they have a little Bluetooth headset in. But there's going to be some wearable function that you're going to look and see augmented values, like the monocle with Yelp, where you can. It's not functional because it looks so far away. You can't. It tells you something, but you don't know if it's that street or 5 streets over, kind of thing.
Yeah.
But the proposition's there that eventually that stuff's going to be valuable. So yeah.
I took a vacation in DC this year, and they have the augmented reality for the mall.
Oh, wow.
It's really cool, where you can hold your phone up and look, and it says, okay, that's the Washington Monument. It has a little arrow on it, and while you're looking at it, you click on it, it gives you the history and things like that. That's a perfect application for the augmented reality environment.
Berlin did that for the look back, where they had some pictures of old Berlin that if you stood in a certain location, you could hold it up and see what you're looking at now versus what it was there. But I mean, that adds, and from a hotel's point of view, if that stuff's in your market, if you see like Philadelphia is doing it right now, if you take that stuff and add it to your digital marketing strategy, saying, hey, look, yes, you're kind of being CVB, but you're also showing relevance of you brought it to them. I think the point that always is made is your vacation is based on where you choose to stay. So if you can show your relationship to all these interesting items and your proximity value to it, you're selling them the idea that even though your price may not be the best price, again, it's not being on price alone, but the location is. And why reinvent learning where everything's at when you've already provided them everything they were interested in doing based on the proximity to your hotel. So any other questions for you, Hunter? Anybody, Neil, Robert, that you might want to throw around for video ideas or anything like that?
So when do you think the downside of the great 360 videos is where you do them so well people don't need to travel?
Oh gosh, I don't know if
no, it's just...
Well, Marriott tried it. They had their booth where they put you on the beach and the sun lamp came on and the breeze and the warm and
really?
I remember they had those booths. They had the Marriott had their booths.
I'm kind of a doubter, honestly, of virtual reality. I don't know. I'm kind of a pessimist but augmented reality, I'm totally for.
Yeah.
I think virtual reality is just kind of, I don't know. I just don't see people
go experience it. Don't go see the castle at Disney World. Go to Germany and see the real one.
Yeah, even like in video game applications, like I just don't see people putting this big thing on their face. And it's just annoying. Like I think people want to sit down with their buds and eat some pizza and play video games. I don't know. It's kind of
you think a Bluetooth headset makes you look like a geek. Watching an Oculus on your face is not a good look.
I have to say, when I was in Shanghai, a part that I missed, there's a place called Funtopia, and it's a VR warehouse. And what they did was they mapped out the warehouse, the physicality of the walkways, the doorways, and everything in the VR space. But then with the VR helmet on, it turned into some spaceship that you were on, and you had to restart it or something. And so you actually walked physically through a VR environment with the headsets on, but you grabbed a rail that you saw in the VR world, and it was actually that's the location of the handrail and stuff.
I think like that's
I need to go. I want to go. Huh?
Yeah, I think like that is almost like that's all I can imagine it really going into, because it's like you're going for this experience and you're doing this thing that's just not going to. I just don't see people are going to do in their homes, but.
Yeah, but to your point, I mean, one way to make kind of that idea a little bit scalable is to offer that type of thing in the hotels. So while people are already traveling, a lot of people are repeat travelers, give them the experience to be able to do those types of experiences. Instead of mailing everything out, have that available at the hotel so that they can experience when they're at Lake Louise, they can experience what it's like to be at Whistler, and say, hey, that's great. And even make it able to book directly as you're going through the virtual experience. You can do that.
Well, any other questions for Hunter? Since it's Hunter, thank you so much for joining us and hanging with us through the dialogue of everything else and sharing some of the video stuff. And Neil, anything else you'd like to say? Thank you so much for having joined us. I mean, we're hitting the 2-hour mark. Just to let you know, we hit the 2-hour mark on the conversation.
We've got to stop.
And we got to stop.
We must stop.
Neil will start finding reasons like, somebody's calling or something. Although he does have the, I'm looking in the back, he's got the surround sound. Technical issues, so he's got the workspace all defined pretty good. But any other comments for anyone about anything that we've discussed today or anything that they thought they wanted to discuss that we haven't mentioned earlier? So, no, yes,
no, I think I'm pretty good.
Again, Neil, if anybody wants to reach out to you, and if you want them to reach out to you for any reason, how should they get in contact with you, or just say, no, guys, don't get in reach me. I came here for one show and that was it.
Look me up on LinkedIn. That's the best way to get in contact with me.
Excellent. Hunter, if people want to get in contact with you, how can they get in contact with you?
Twitter, LinkedIn. I mean, Twitter is right up, I guess, wherever you want to click on my name, or just search me up on LinkedIn, Hunter Garrett at Flip2. So
Hunter Garrett at Flip2. All right, Mr. Robert Cole.
Well, obviously, timpeter.com and at TCPeter on Twitter. Oh, wait, no, I'm sorry. Robert K. Cole. Robert K. Cole on social media and rockcheetah.com on the web.
Excellent. There's just the inside joke of this is whenever we go around and make sure everybody gets said is where they go. Tim always goes through, I guess because I asked him one time, his Facebook name, his Twitter handle, his Periscope name,
which are all different.
And they're all different.
It's a unique strategy of covering.
We started signing off. As like, well, you can find me at timpeter.com/Lauren Gray. So
yeah. I actually concluded, I think that was like some sort of search strategy where it was, list for misspellings or something that he comes up. If you go into Google and you get something close, you will find him on some channel. So
put in Tim and just put the letter P and you probably have all 15 of his variable names.
Exactly.
For anybody that wants to replay this show, it is at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/blabcast, as well as all of our other shows. And as mentioned earlier in the show, we have been doing this well over a year now. So we have more than just the 53. So there's lots to listen there. There's also a podcast recap of the show that's also at hospitalitydigitalmarketing.com/podcast. So Neil, I can't begin to thank you enough for joining us and literally taking 2 hours out of your day to chatter about whatever happened to pop up on the board. I do hope that won't be the last time you get to make it in, and you can tell all the rest of the revenue management board that it's not as painful as it sounds.
That's right.
although you're a natural at it, you should do your own show.
I need to get the shirt first.
You got to get the shirt for it first, and then just do your own show after that. But please, if ever you get the opportunity, come back to the show.
Thank you very much for having me. It's been great.
I was really disappointed. I thought we were going to do some screen sharing, some really deep dives into looking at some analytics on how just here's how we calculate.
I did screen sharing on my iPhone.
Oh, that's right. There you go.
Toys.
Yeah. Look at that. Here's how we tweak this formula to really do.
I can't wait to see the recording with actually something going on to the green screen behind Lauren.
Oh yeah, I know. Yeah,
that's for the commercials when I do the recap for it.
That's the post production.
Thank you so much for taking the time. I know that you're sitting de facto for Ed. You didn't have to sit here for the whole thing, but you did, and I sincerely appreciate you did.
Absolutely.
Tell Ed we like you better than him. That if that's quite all right. He doesn't have to. It's all right.
Holly, I'll find. I'm not sure where that video is. I'll find it though, and I will share it out for the video for the RMIM from Rock.
Oh, thank you. Actually, yes, yeah. I get asked about that too. People keep asking me, "It's like, where's the video for that?" Because that was phenomenal. It is the one most notable thing out of the entire Rock conference was that presentation. I thought that was absolutely rocking. So, yes, if you get to share that'd be great. I have a lot of people that would love it. Be happy to post it, and we'll definitely get that shared out. Holly, that's Lauren and Robert's presentation. Yeah, well, we already posted ours. They're already on YouTube.
Thank you.
Yeah, we already have ours. I Facebook Lived Robert, so he got a little live presentation there as well.
Yeah, if you want the Blair Witch style found video approach to production, yes, that's certainly my presentation.
Number one breakouts. They were the number one breakouts from Rock.
We were.
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yep. Holly, as always, thank you for being in the peanut gallery and keeping us correct, me particularly correct, as to my references, my obscure references you clarify. And Dave,
Holly Zoba, the PolitiFact of hospitality digital marketing.
The fact checker of the show.
Lauren Gray gets 3 Pinocchios.
Yeah, that's right. I get the
pants on fire to Neil. So,
we had David for a while. Thanks to David when you play back this show. Sean Williams from Spring Gauge, thank you for joining us as well. And for everyone else that joined us live, thank you so much for hanging with us the entire time or for the time that you did have. And for those who play us back and watch us on Facebook Live. To that end, we'll see you all next week, next Friday, 10:30 Central, 11:30 Eastern, This Week in Hospitality Marketing.
Not me, But have a great time back with
good
Tim.
show. Anybody wants to show up? Robert's not here next week.
I won't be here. This will be. You could be here.
We could make it within an hour. We could make the show an hour.
No. The shows were shorter when I'm on them. With the two that I wasn't on with you, Tim, and Ed, we're going 2:15, 2:30. It was unbelievable.
Says the man who's still on the show 2 hours later.
I said we need to stop at 2. Yeah.
All right.
Okay. This is just the wrap up.
All right.
Gotta
Thank you
go.
all very much. We'll see you next week.